Pray for a miracle that everything is synced. Because yeah. I got home basically like 2 minutes before I need to start stream. Really needed to use the bathroom. Hence, we're a little bit late. Because I couldn't get my stuff set up too fast. But hopefully everything sounds okay, looks okay, all the usuals. Hello, hello, hello. We are closing in on the great countdown at work. So next week is my last week at my current job, and panic is starting to set in. It's kind of fun. But yeah. So I hope everybody's doing good. We've had some wonderful events happen. We got it's coming up. If you're going to Fishtoberfest, yeah, it's on the 26th of October in Portland, Oregon. Let me know. I'll be there. I'll see you. All that kind of stuff. Fish room fever, bro. It's been a while. How you been, buddy? Tibet. First time in your life? Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I just want to make sure I've got it correctly. But yeah. Anna, my company just had a major restructuring. I'm okay, but some of my colleagues were impacted. My position is also changing. I am kind of also panicking. Oh, that's unfortunate. Man, I need to gather my thoughts for a half second before I go off the handle and say something stupid. I really wish that the stock market, especially in the United States, did not reward companies for ruining the lives of their employees. Right now, normally we try to talk about fish here, but I'm going to get into this for a minute because it's something that's peeved me for quite a while. The way that the stock market reacts is that, oh, you've cut a cost, so we're going to reward your stock price by basically removing income from the entirety of U.S. society. And really this impacts global markets too, but when you do this and you keep rewarding them over and over again, who's going to buy your damn product? It's one of those things where the other thing that gets kind of nefarious, and I see this a lot in tech because my industry is really going through it for the last 3 years at this point now. They'll lay all these people off, and then all the executives give themselves this big pat on the back, we cut all these costs. Let's give ourselves massive bonuses. Or they'll use a ton of money to buy back stock, to inflate the price more and more and more. And none of this expenditure actually helps the health of the company long term, because in the end, the amount of money they cut, they end up spending anyway. And rather than having more staff to potentially produce better or more products, or whatever their nature is, they have less staff that is more stressed and has less incentive. Right? Where if you were to look at Japan, and this is kind of a famous story, especially in the video game space, when the last major kind of economical downturn, when Iwata was in charge of Nintendo. And if you're ever interested, Satoru Iwata is a really interesting person to look at from a perspective of good leadership. Rather than lay off employees at Nintendo, they gave them raises. And he forced all of the upper management, executives, VPs, all that high level stuff. He forced all of them to take fairly large compensation cuts. Because he knew that if you were to get rid of employees or cut their compensation, it would not encourage them to continue being creative and build the products that would bring the revenue back to Nintendo. But if the leadership sacrifices and trickles that money down to the rest of the people with an amount of faith of going We are doing this because we know that you are important to helping our company not only survive but thrive on the as we come out of this downturn. Now, granted, Nintendo at the time was kind of underpaying compared to a lot of the other industry. So there is kind of that where it's like, yeah, it is compensation raise, but it was more like leveling out with the rest of the industry. But it's still paying their people more. And there is a certain part of leadership there that seems to be missing in honestly almost everywhere in the United States, where the United States loves to take leaders sacrifice the hardest working people to just boost themselves more, and it's just a really disgusting practice. And I see it so much right now in tech industry, and it makes me really, really sad because it's the opposite of leadership. It's just disgusting. But that has nothing to do with the topic tonight. It's about I want to start hatching baby brine shrimp, but it's going to be in my room. A water heater. Should I get the Zis hatchery? The Zis hatchery is expensive but useful. It takes away a lot of the like DIY parts. Like if you're not very DIY savvy, like this guy here, then it's really, really useful. It's high quality. It fits a good volume. It makes measuring things very easy. You could literally follow like the co-op method, so to speak, about like how much you use brine shrimp eggs, how much brine shrimp to add, salt, all that kind of stuff. Because they have I think an article out or a video. I think pretty sure Corey has a video out of how he does brine shrimp, and it all works really, really well. And it's all based on a hatchery. The only thing I will say that is like not so great about the Zis hatchery is the little stand just isn't tall enough. So there is kind of, if you have kind of like bigger hands, there's not a lot of room to get under it if it's sitting flat. That's why you'll see a lot of like Master Breeder Dean and a number of other people who have like bigger fish rooms. They've just built this little like hanger thing basically out of 2x4 on their wall so that it's sitting up and it's much easier to drain and do all that kind of stuff rather than rely on the little like black stand that comes with it. But it's not like it's impossible to do. It's doable. It's just like a small gripe, if you will. But if you are trying to do smaller amounts, so the real question becomes how much are you trying to hatch? And then I'll get into the topic here. Because Aquarium Fun is kind of mentioning this. If you're only trying to really hatch a small amount, say maybe you're trying to do 2 or 3 smaller tanks, as opposed to say like, well, I got 10 different tanks I need to feed, right? Then there are some smaller things like Brine Shrimp Direct has their Brine Shrimp Hatchery dish, which is a little smaller. There's ways to do it out of like just converting a water bottle or something a bit smaller. So there's things like that you can look at. Leo, I will respond to your question after I get into the topic because I feel like the topic is kind of short. But every time I feel like it's kind of short, I take 20 minutes because we know me, I talk too much. So let me explain my topic. Can aquarium keeping have another golden age? And let me explain why I want to talk about this and what prompted this. I was doing some stuff over the weekend. I was really busy, and there's some. My family member has been kind of in the hospital. Has been in the hospital the whole time, basically. Like, and so there's been a lot of like back and forth between that portion of my family, just trying to keep updates and figure out where we can or can't help. Things like that. So, needless to say, I was pretty busy on the weekend and didn't get as much done as I wanted to do. And I basically have to service, like, every filter in my house. I'm at that point now, and I was like, okay, they can make it till next week, but basically next weekend, I have to service every single filter in my house. Which probably means I'm going to miss my aquarium club meeting that is this Saturday because I'm going to take that time to instead service every filter in the house. And my first thought was this. I need someone like once a month to just clean all my filters for me because I work too freaking much. And my thought was like I need a younger aquarist. Think about it like when you're in a neighborhood in the old days, you'd find the neighborhood kid and you'd pay him, $10, $20, depending on the size of your lawn. go mow my lawn so I don't have to do it, so I can focus on other stuff. Because at a certain point, right, you're depending on where you are in your career, you'd play that like time versus money thing, and it might be easier quotation marks to pay someone to do it versus the what you would do in that amount of time, so that you can focus that time on other things. Now, granted, not quite the same here, but kind of the joke of it all. And it led me to think, after I joked about this with my wife, is like, I just need to find someone that can clean all of my filters once a month for like $100. And she laughed and she was like, do you think you could find somebody? Because that feels like it'd be worth it. But it basically got me thinking down this line of like, you know, in our hobby, we used to have this more golden age. And a lot of this was like the 70s, sometimes parts of the 60s, but really the 70s and 80s, where aquariums as a whole were a significantly more popular or common thing to be kept, especially in the United States. Now, I know it's a little different in like the Asian markets and part of like Germany, especially in Europe, but like parts of Europe where aquarium keeping and a hobby is a little more popular than it is in like North America. But in North America, the hobby has really turned downward. Not to say that there are not very successful younger businesses. Aquarium Co-op is a perfect example, right? But in the 70s and 80s, fish the keeping, are you sure it wasn't the Dark Ages? It might be the Dark Ages in the sense of level of technology and spreading of information, but in the commonality of keeping aquariums. Like, think about how many TV shows and pieces of media you see from that era where a fish tank was somewhere, right? There's so many, if you think about like old sitcoms and things like that, a fish tank was somewhere in the set all over the place because it was more of a commonplace thing of like, oh yeah, a fish tank, that's a normal thing a family's gonna have, right? As opposed to nowadays where, and maybe this is the fault in some regards of social media, as our ability to access entertainment has significantly expanded courtesy of the internet, right? And our attention spans have kind of dipped a little. The slower things like keeping fish, because keeping fish really is a game of patience. That has caused, I think, less and less people to get into this hobby or look at this hobby because there's just so many things you can do now that you previously could not as easily do. And access to the internet gives people a world of entertainment options where keeping fish, especially, it usually starts when you're young. So you probably had to have someone in your family who was into fish. And as we're seeing people also have less and less children, we're seeing that like that expansion of hobbyists slows down some. Now, there is kind of the question there, like, was COVID another golden age? I think COVID was a very temporary influx because people were basically forced to be in their homes. But you're seeing so many people go away from aquariums that got into them during COVID, but now that they're not forced to stay inside, they can go out hiking, go to a beach, whatever keeping an aquarium brought to them, they can go out and do those things again. So they don't like kind of feel like they have to bring those things in, if that makes sense. Now, do I think that there is a way to change that? Yes. On, let me give you an example. We're one of those things right here. I think the more that you have, especially good creators, because there are plenty of, I won't call them bad actors, but there are lots of creators out there that are doing things that aren't for the good or the educational side of this hobby. You can think about some of the early videos of someone like Paul Cufaro. I know that I've been informed that he's a bit changed now as he's gotten older. But, there's lots of stuff out there that is like the quick kind of sloppy, what I mean is like nonsensical, non-educational content that's out there. It's not like when you watch, I'll rag on this channel all day long because I think it's such a BS channel, but like Aquarium Info, if you've never seen this channel, um, it's the largest, basically, YouTube channel for aquariums. Not even close. More subscribers than anybody else. But here's the thing. None of it's really educational. It's all these like fast, quick, like I'm setting up a Lego tank or I'm doing a this. And it has nothing to do with actually like safely or intelligently keeping those animals. Right? So it's kind of a frustration point in that one of the creators with the largest potential platform does nothing to actually expand the hobby. They're just using the hobby as a way to get a niche and then push basically the normal YouTubeified video that is out there. And I say that, you know, yeah, like example, turned my bed into a giant ant farm. Right? There's all these like stupid videos, and I've seen tons of them, and every time I'm so frustrated because I'm hoping that at one point this person will show they're an actual hobbyist and not just somebody using animals to farm clicks, which is what they're doing. Whereas there are lots of other creators that provide great information, right? You could argue that like MD Fish Tanks focuses on aquascaping, but he's always teaching things in every video, right? There is something that is being taught, and you could see like the same tank get aquascaped 6 or 7 times, but there's always a new tiny little lesson at a minimum in every one of those videos, whether it's just about how you would lay out the hardscape or how you want to set the filters up for flow because of how the scape design is, why you might make a choice of this plant versus that plant in this location in a tank, etc. There's all sorts of little tidbits of information that are educational, that are helpful, that are great, whether it's his personal tips, like how he bags his media, right? And he'll like bag aqua soil and leave it in bags so it's easy to move tank to tank when he's taking a tank down and rescaping a new one. He just has these bags of aqua soil instead of trying to scoop it all out, and it's only like the sand or gravel that actually has to get scooped out. Like little tricks like that are super smart. I think it'd be really helpful if you're that person who wants to do a new aquascape every 3 to 6 months. You can learn something from that. And that's where I think there's an opportunity to have kind of the new gold age, but that gold age would be more like the technological age. And in the sense of the more and more that we get various assistive technologies, the more and more we're seeing people who previously couldn't do something able to do something. And that could be applied to our hobby. And it starts with, you know, dummies like me being here, helping people the best I can to learn something somewhere, or just to fix some of their problems so that people that are struggling, whether you're a brand new aquarist, like we talked about the light settings in my last Aquarium 911, or whether you're somebody who's been doing it for a while and you just keep having this relentless pain in the butt fight with algae, being able to help people that are dealing with those kind of problems is more likely to get them into the hobby deeper. And then if they're in the hobby deeper, they're more likely to spread their learned knowledge now. Like, oh, you know what? I dealt with that same problem you're dealing with. You know how I figured it out? I had to go get help from this guy on YouTube, but this is this thing he taught me. And since our water's similar, I just did this little change to it and it fixed this problem. So why don't you try that thing? And you get these people who might leave the hobby because they're stressing about it, coming back and getting deeper. That's my thought. We are definitely in a trouble period where in the grand scheme of things, the age of the average aquarist is like creeping up. And I know thankfully in our audience here with the folks in chat and the replay crew, there are a number of you who are a bit younger. Leo, great example, super active member. Uh, guys like Stephen P. Not really that geek boy. He's like ancient. But some of us that are younger compared to what a lot of the hobby has been, which is like there is kind of this stereotypical joke that like the aquarium hobbyist is like a really old, socially awkward guy because most of us are. You're 35. That's young compared to a lot of people in this hobby. I hate to break it to you. A lot of people in this hobby are in their like 50s and 60s, bro. Just if you were to go to one of my club meetings, you would see. You would see. A lot of the number of young people in the audience. Very low. But yeah, when a middle-aged man represents the youth of the hobby, we are in trouble. There's a great example. Hood Aquatics. I feel out of place at club meetings. I'm young at heart, but I'm definitely like I show age. But I think part of that is like young at heart being in like a technology psychopath, right? It keeps you a little younger in some ways. See, there we go. Featherfin, thank goodness I'm not in my 30s yet. You're like the cutting edge of youth in our hobby. Coffee shop. You guys don't remember Metaframe aquariums? Oh, Lord. Okay. Let me catch up on... There was a question, and there's some other, like, things in chat. I want to get to those. But then after that, at Bentley Pascal make it super easy for me to see your questions. We'll go full open Q&A. The usual back and forth conversation. You can roast my Seahawks for making stupid plays and losing against the Buccaneers. Or you can praise my Mariners for getting a win off of Scooble. I don't know if you, for you folks that are in baseball, you know that's quite the achievement. For you folks that are not in baseball, you're probably like, what's a Scooble? And you're right. Oh, Lord. All right. Leo, do you think the new Flex is worth it? Or am I better off getting a new 40 breeder? P.S. You got 9 days to get your Switch 2 for Pokemon. Charmander is the best. Yeah, so it's funny because, like, the Pokemon comes out the 16th, which is my last day at my current job. So my thought was, I probably will get to leave early on my last day because they'll just collect a lot of my equipment, take my badge, and kick me the F out the door. It'll probably be a lot of just saying goodbye to team members and things like that. My hope was I could leave early. There's like 2 Costco's nearby, and I can hit at least one, if not both, if like the first one's out, and maybe pick up the Switch 2 bundle with Pokemon for my wife, because I love her, and she loves Pokemon. Thusly, I must spend a significant number of dollary dues to show my wife that I love her. Before I just really want her to be able to play the game. So yeah, I'll do it. We're getting to the point of where it's the thing she needs the Switch 2 for, which is Pokemon, and then there's a couple other games on the like not so distant horizon that are interesting, but they won't be out at the same time. So we got a little space on that one, but yeah. Now, as for your tank question, I like the upgrades. I'm going to put this in quotation marks. The upgrades of the Flex are basically, and I think Stephen P. put this best, they took all of the upgrades that people were making Etsy parts for and just made them official on the Flex. It's not like there's too many huge differences on the Flex comparatively, but they did do some changes that are just good quality of life things. Me, personally, you should know my answer. As much as I like the Flex that I used to have, I'm going to put a 40 breeder up basically every time. Because I'm a rainbow fish psycho, and 40s are basically perfect for rainbows in small groups. Now, if I'm going to a bigger group, I need like a 75, 120, 125, 240, 480. I could really use like a 1,000-gallon tank. Somebody just want to hand me one of those? That'd be great. But yeah, I tend to gravitate toward 40 breeders. I just really love that tank. It is just such a good footprint for so many of the fish that most of us in the planted freshwater side of the hobby keep. Yeah. That's my thoughts. I think if you want a smaller tank, the Flex, because it's a nice all-in-one package. It's easy peasy. You don't have to go select filters, and you don't have to do this and that. It's just kind of like one and done. You're paying for that convenience. But if you want something a bit more customized with a slightly larger footprint, then the 40 breeder is possibly the best tank ever made. Possibly. Somebody might argue with me about that, but I think the 40 breeder is probably the best tank, period. Pick and choose. By the way, thank you for recently joining our Discord community of members and having fun there. I'm just enjoying watching my rams, horns, and scuds. Oh man, the scuds are so entertaining. Scuds are actually like really cool little micro creatures, especially if you get to appreciate them and you don't like put scuds in a rainbow fish tank, because the rainbows will just chase and eat them all. But I know people that have a like dedicated, basically like scud colony for feeding a lot of their other fish, and they've told me on many occasions I will just sit and watch my scuds. They're surprisingly entertaining. That's how it is in the fish world. You find some different behavior, something that's interesting compared to what you're used to, and you find this new appreciation. For me, it was dojo loaches. I love dojo loaches. Mostly because they're like the perfect combination of constantly giving me a heart attack or my wife, and just like silly and funny. Zach, found my new profession, cleaning Bentley's filters. I don't know that it's going to be a profession. I'm not paying that well, but if you're in the Northwest, you want to clean filters, then let me know. Oh man. Victor Reyes, have you ever had planaria in your tanks? What should I do? I saw a few in my shrimp tank. Okay. Yes, I've had planaria in my tank, but when I've usually had planaria, it's been in a tank where I also have fish. And all I did was stop feeding. A lot of times the reason why you start getting planaria outbreaks is because you're just overfeeding too much, and it produces enough excess food that the planaria can go and take advantage of that. Now, there are things like traps and things to try and trap your planaria. They're only so effective, but they do some work. Realistically, the best way is to stop feeding. And if you think that your shrimp colony is going to be okay for that period of time, this can be upwards of about a week, sometimes longer. Or you just if you have the ability to put some kind of fish in there that will eat planaria but not harm your shrimp, there's a number of small things that will do that. Rainbows are really good at doing that, but they will kill shrimp. So that's not a great option for you. But there's a couple of options, like you can in theory pull guppies out of a tank temporarily, like a bunch of male guppies or something, and let them come in and eat up a bunch of planaria, or some smaller tetras, things that white clouds, stuff like that, stuff that won't hurt them. But the medication ways to deal with planaria can harm shrimp, so you don't want to do that. So it's kind of like making a judgment call, figuring out what the right method is for you. Guppy Girl, I feel like the houseplant hobby has increased greatly as well. Maybe it scratches that itch for people who need, because it requires less knowledge on keeping needs. Yeah, plants went crazy during COVID. I remember talking to some friends that were getting into houseplants, and just like the pricing went crazy on houseplants. And it got this like almost pseudo black market of people like trading things, because they became hard to find and the farms were trying to scale up. Now it's come back down to kind of earth a little bit, but I think there's more people that have just kept keeping houseplants, because that ability to bring a little bit of nature into your home and make it feel a little more cozy, is the way I'll put it. Because I feel like being around parts of nature for people that don't have a lot of nature in their homes brings a certain hard to properly quantify sense of enjoyment. I have new next door neighbors that recently moved in, and one of them is a big terrestrial plant nerd. And from their back window, you can just see all these huge plants that he's keeping, and including this like massive monstera. Then they've like their backyard, they've got all these like hangers of plants that they've put up and stuff. Like very clearly, really caught the plant bug, and now is like just loving it, and it's a part of their life. And I made a comment to the gentleman. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, oh, your plants look amazing. I can't keep plants terrestrially very well, but as long as they're in a fish tank, I can. And it was like, oh, that's really cool. I was like, yeah, at some point you guys should come over. We let you, take a walk around. Let's just sit and chat, get to know each other, all kind of stuff. They've been they're very quiet. They like to stay to themselves. So, what do you do? Nonsensical channels. I didn't know Bentley watched my channel. Oh, geek boy. Oh, geek boy. You'll never know the truth. Garage Skills. I'm wrapping up my vacation road trip today. I'm in Vegas today. I visited 2 LFSs. One is about 2 months old and is expanding. Wet Pets. The other is 3 generations old and has been around 47 years. Tropical Aquarium. That's really cool. There is a local place very close to me that is family owned, and it's like multiple generations deep at this point. And that's Sierra Pets. Sierra Fish and Pets is the technical name. But Sierra has been around for a while, and at one point they had multiple stores. I can remember in the 90s that they had multiple stores, and I would go to their different stores because each store kind of had like a little specialty, which was what made them kind of interesting in how they were trying to expand as a company. And then as toward the end of the 90s, when so many fish stores in the Seattle area closed, they just slowly scaled back to just their one original store, and that store is still doing phenomenally well. And it's family run. They're a steadily improving fish section because a person I know started working there and basically took it over and made it back to the glory days. It's kind of great now, which is wonderful because their main fish person was like part-time or left, if I remember, and so like kind of the quality went down a little bit for a little while, but now it's back on the upswing and doing quite well. And every once in a while I go pick up some stuff there because, support local stores. Support them while you can because some of them really need it. Tibet, what heater should I use in the Zis hatchery to hit 82 degrees? You're going to need something very small. There's like little tiny 25 watt heaters, but you don't need anything with a lot of power. I honestly ran mine because I was in a room that I kept heated. So I just ran mine at that and just learned that instead of 24 hours to get my brine shrimp, it was about 36. So I just timed that to where the night before, not day before, but like night, I would do it. It would go to the night, and then the next morning, it would be ready. And I could start feeding to my fish tanks when I was doing brine shrimp, when I was raising a bunch of babies and all that kind of stuff, and I needed it more. So there's that. Depends on if you're only heating individual tanks, and you don't have like a specific room right now, yeah, you just need something small. The smaller the better. I think there are like 10 watt USB heaters. Geek Boy literally just mentioned that, and I scrolled down a little bit and saw. There's a little temperature cord controller on the cord at 10 watts. A little USB, probably get off of Amazon. Probably your best bet. Just tiny ones is your best bet. You have such a low water volume in that Zis that you do not need a lot of power. Let me see here. Making sure I didn't miss something. Garage Gills. It's a big leap in the fish hobby for new owners, but the Stockton store has been a successful feed store for some time, and they are very enthusiastic. Oh, okay, we're talking about stuff in the area. Pikachu. Speaking of the Mariners, I'm not a huge fan of baseball, but in 1994, my dad took me to Alex Rodriguez's first ever MLB game against the Red Sox. And oh, it was great to see those throwback Seattle unis. Okay, hold on. We're going to talk about that. I will temporarily delve. Apologies, everybody. I know. Let me find... I have this saved on purpose. I just need to find it wherever I've got it hidden in my 8,000 tabs. This is where you can shame me for my 10 bajillion tabs. You're in here somewhere. I keep this saved on purpose. Did I actually? No, there it is. For a second, I thought I closed this window. I was going to be very sad with myself. Let me let this bad boy load. I'm going to show you guys something. It's a little... To do this. Oh, you're just like not loading correctly? Let's fix some things. Why is this picture not loading correctly? You're going to drive me insane. So an old newspaper that is kind of archived, a lot of old editions, but this is called the Olympian from Washington. And they broke something in their formatting, and I can literally tell because the picture is not loading correctly. I'm gonna have to do it this way. Hold on. So back in 1994, the Seattle Mariners had a game where they had what's called Turn Back the Clock Night. It was like one of the very first ones to ever be done, where they wore a retro jersey. Let me make sure that this is looking at the correct thing. Wonk. Gonna do this. I'm gonna show you guys something. And that was the old Rainiers jersey, which now the Rainiers are AAA ball club, but back then they were a little different, and they were only existed for a couple of years. So you have this jersey on the side that I've got blown up. This is old Rainiers jersey, but this is a reprint and not the one that was worn that game. And how do I know this? Well, I am a massive, massive Ken Griffey Jr. fan. Have been since I was a kid. And Griffey, because they were auctioning a bunch of these jerseys off for charity that year, Griffey wore 8 different jerseys throughout the game. I have only ever seen one because I own it. I have jersey number 7 of 8. It has this really cool patch on it that is effectively its built-in certificate of authenticity. As far as retro jerseys are concerned, it is incredible. It's probably worth a stupid amount of money, and it sits now in a safe deposit box, mostly because I'm trying to keep it protected. And I don't want to risk it getting damaged or harmed until I have a proper way to effectively have it museum level displayed, which I'm working on, trying to figure out how I want to display it correctly. And when I finish building something downstairs after life gets back to semi-normal instead of what it is now in the current like crazy tech sphere, then I can build it out downstairs when I do a remodel. ? It's not really a remodel, but kind of completely change one of the rooms in my house. So yeah, there's a little fun baseball related thing. Speaking of 1994 Mariners, my dad and I were like really big Alex Rodriguez fans in the sense of we really thought he was going to be something truly special and amazing. And it is really unfortunate that he did steroids because he really was an incredible talent and he didn't need them. But yeah, that's sports. There's always some crazy pressures. Uh-oh, Fish the Keeping. I've seen you on MTG Arena a few times lately. What format are you playing? I usually play a game or two of Timeless. Because it's the closest I can get to, like, Modern. I honestly am getting really, really frustrated with how Magic has been keeping formats to a point of where I'm almost going to stop playing on Arena 2. Like, I've stopped playing in paper. I might stop playing in Arena as well, just because I don't... They're making a lot of decisions that are bad for play, but really good for generating revenue. And that just drives me crazy. Because it's so imbalanced compared to what it used to be. Classio Sucii. I like the 40 breeders, 75s, and 180s. All have the 18-inch front-to-back dimension, which I love for rainbows. Well, 40 breeders technically are like 17 front-to-back. But very close. Yeah, very close. But yeah. I just love that. I like that broader front-to-back footprint because it allows me to have a decent amount of plants but still leave lots of swim room for rainbows. And that's something I love, obviously, being a plant psycho and a rainbow psycho, right? It's basically perfect. And I'm dead there with you. About the only... I think if I was going to go to a 180, I would just go like all the way to a 240. but those are acrylic. So yeah, I'm certainly not getting a 240 in glass. Good lord, you'd never be able to move that damn thing. It weighs so much. Mike Hunt. Oh, I did it to myself. Mike, you, sir. How dare you 90s joke me? Uh, 25 long has a weird footprint. Dude, the 33 long has a weird footprint. That's a 4-foot tank that is like that tall and about that wide. But yeah, a lot of the long variants of tanks have very kind of strange footprints. About the only one that I really like, and it's just because I own one, so I have a lot of bias, is the 75-gallon long, because that's 5 foot, but then it's 16 by 16, so it's basically perfectly square, but it's just super long. So it's kind of like a ridiculously long 40 breeder, and it's kind of a really neat tank in that regard. I think for most people, the 60 breeder would kind of replace that, because 5 foot is just so long and it's so hard to put in a lot of places, where if you wanted a bigger 40 breeder, you go to like the 60 breeder and just go the 4-foot variant, right? But yeah, I'm with you. There's a lot of like really weird footprints in the like long variants of tanks. All right, Leo, pros and cons of the undergravel filter to compare to other filters. Okay. Con. We'll start here. If you want to make it air driven, you will only get so much flow, and it can make it very difficult to keep certain plants that are more high demanding that might require CO2, because distribution of the CO2 in your water is a little tougher as you have less flow. Con number 2. If you don't like having a deeper substrate, basically undergravel filters are not for you, because they really do need a certain depth of substrate to become effective. That's basically where we can end the cons. Okay, there's one more con. The preset plates, if you're not using a more custom solution, really don't fit a lot of tanks super well. And some of the ways that the tubes are designed are very outdated compared to how it would be to optimize water movement. Think about how like Corey has been working with his jet lifter tube on things and kind of DIYing it, and I guess potentially making a saleable version at some point. Compared to the ones that now just kind of go straight up and then just have an angle that actually causes a lot of air to trap here, and it causes the flow not to be as efficient as it could be, especially when it's air driven. Now, granted, you can, with a lot of those, literally just take that little cap off and drop a power head on top of it, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of flow, and you're kind of making a, like, strange DIY inside the tank canister filter. Right? But it's very, very effective. Now, the other thing that you should pay attention to is if you don't have something to naturally consume the nitrates that are going to be caused by that buildup of mulm, right? Because it's getting processed by bacteria and eventually becoming inert, it is creating things like your ammonia and all that, and the bacteria will take care of that ammonia and nitrite, but inevitably you will get a bunch of nitrate. Now, granted, we can just fix this with water changes, but as that builds up over time, there is a risk if you go and decide, oh, I'm going to mess with it, or I'm going to vac out my gravel to try and clean it up, that you could unleash a pocket of not so great things into your aquarium, and there is a tiny risk of creating like a septic pocket in your aquarium. Very tiny. Very, very tiny. Likelihood very low, as long as you're doing things intelligently. Pros. You will have the clearest water you've had in any tank, because nothing is going to polish better than that deep level of substrate that you're forcing water to go through before it recycles back up. You will not have random particulates floating around. It is fairly efficient in the grand scheme of things to get a large volume of bacteria into your system. If you have root feeding plants, it will naturally pull a lot of those nutrients down into the roots and thus make those plants happier. Other pros, it's really not like it. If you think that sponge filters are ugly, this is a replacement for a sponge filter that is relatively clean looking. It won't interfere with a kind of more aquascaped or heavily planted tank by having the eyesore in the tank. You'll just have a couple of tubes, and it's very easy if you are clever to hide those tubes. An example would be like Master Breeder Dean had a tank with his lungfish where he just used black tubing to hide it into his black background and use an undergravel filter that was tied up to using the undergravel as a pre-filter, going out to a canister and then coming back in through a spray bar. You never would have known unless you're right there, very, very close. You can't even see the piping at all. So there's clever ways to hide it and do things like that where you can't really do that with a sponge filter, right? You also don't have a lot of equipment showing down into the tank like you would with a hang on the back or a canister and things like that. So you can make a relatively clean looking tank while also producing excess oxygen if you're doing it either air driven or even if you're doing it like power driven because of the amount of movement and the way that the water is moving around the tank. It does add more oxygen than a lot of other filtration methods. Are there other pros? They're cheap. They're really inexpensive. They're practically bulletproof as long as you're patient and not just dumping like 200 fish into your tank in 2 days, right? They really do handle a lot of things very, very well. So yeah, there's your pro-con list. Overall, it's a very, very efficient filtration method. There's a reason why it has existed since like the dawn of time in our hobby. Because it works. Plain and simple. Alright, I gotta play some catch up. I know I'm a little bit behind. I'm making sure. Oh, my wife talking about fire starters and Pokemon. Good to see you, honey. M&T Aquatics, if I was closer, I could build you an aluminum frame display case. Nice. Yeah, but this is my baby, basically. That's like my most valued, not necessarily monetarily, although it's probably worth a stupid amount of money now because I've never seen another one and it's very unique. Yeah, but anyway, it's my like most treasured childhood possession, basically. It is that, and I have a couple of blankets from like when I was a baby that I have hidden away. That I used as my like blankets until I was in my teens because they were just comfy and warm, and I've had them forever because that's how I am. All right, let me see here. Lots of Pokemon chatter. That's what happens when my wife shows up. Leo, what is the best way to get a full cycle in an aquarium, or is it harder to get in a freshwater tank? So here's the thing about the like full cycle. It requires things generating waste. And just putting in ammonia without like carbon sources will never perfectly build it out. Aeration helps because aerobic bacteria are one of the fastest growing bacterias for not only kickstarting the nitrogen cycle, but being the primary force in the nitrogen cycle. Time is usually your friend. Like trying to do it faster there's ways to kickstart it to make it go quicker, but actually speeding it up, and these big quotation marks I'm going to use here, is kind of a false positive. Because usually speeding it up, if you're trying to go too fast, is going to hurt you in the long run. Because you'll put too many fish in, or you'll feed too heavy, and you'll have some spike, and usually that ends up being like a giant algae outbreak, or some other thing that's more of a bother and less of a danger to your fish. But it's all things you can deal with. So yeah. Only way, I've been watching FishTube for a while because I got sucked back into Magic the Gathering with the Final Fantasy set. I spent like $15,000. What the? What? Holy Lord! All right, well, you must have went on the real crazy stuff because I know some of those cards are crazy expensive, and that set in particular had ridiculous inflations of its pricing. But yeah, yeah. That's part of the reason I got out of that game is just I don't like the universes beyond stuff, even though I love Final Fantasy, like very clearly. All three of my dogs are named for Final Fantasy characters. Oh, dude, wait, thank you for the 10 gifted memberships. It's very sweet of you. But wow, you went deep. I hope you at least got the cards you wanted, whether from a pure collector standpoint or from a play standpoint, maybe both. Because some of the alternate arts that I've seen are really, really gorgeous. Mike got a membership. Watch out. But yeah. Oh, had to collect the surge foils and the bonus sheets. Do you have all four of the neon chocobos? Like, you have the gold? Because the gold is big dollary dues. Many, many dollary dues. More dollary dues than I can possibly fathom on a magic card. Don't have the black or gold. Okay. So just right, there are 4 neons and then black and gold. The last time they put out the first neon card they put out, they only had like the 3 versions, so like my brain thought about it like that, as opposed to realizing that they put 8 million chocobos out, because why wouldn't they? Yeah. Wow. Still wild. Did you? We might have to talk later. I don't want to eat the stream too hard. We're at the tail end, but welcome back. Good to see you. I hope that your spouse does not beat you up too hard for those purchases, or that if inevitably, if you need to, you can make a profit off of them, because Magic does go up pretty often, and the Final Fantasy set is like bat-ass crazy. Open the yellow, traded for the pink. You went to MagicCon. There's your real mistake. You went to a giant Magic convention full of all of the rarest of rare cards at vendors, and thus the temptation went from this level, normal temptation for a psychopath like us, into off the charts level temptation. To be fair, when I used to do like Magic conventions, some of the local ones, and I know some of the really big vendors in Seattle, I had to really rein myself in on a couple purchases. There are some that I made that were expensive, but not quite as expensive as what you're talking about. Although granted, one of my like purchases, I was like, I don't know if that card's going to continue to go up. Maybe I should just wait a little longer. Nah, I'll just spend the $150 on that card now. That card's now like $3,000, so I guess I made the right decision at that time. But there's a lot of other stuff where it's like, Lord, I really want this card, and then they reprinted it like 15 times, and its value went. So it's what happens in a card game, right? I can finally agree that I love Charmander. I do love Charmander. I probably love Blastoise. If we start talking like end game evolutions, I love Blastoise more than Charizard. But I did play like the original Pokemon game, and I definitely played it hyper competitive when I was young, and I definitely beat down many a fellow child using a Charizard, because it was at the time the best card. So yeah. Yeah. Magic cards don't expire the way Fisher cars do. Well, I mean, inevitably cars gain a crowd of enthusiasts, and then they start going back up in price. Inevitably. But it's only for a time window, because like what we're seeing right now, gang, I know that we've gone way off the beaten path of fish, and I apologize, but most of you are used to this by now. Oh, my wife knows my absolute favorite Pokemon. I bully her about that all the time. The truest king of all Pokemon is Snorlax. Except no substitutes. There is no other one. They might say that there's the god Pokemon. No, it's Snorlax. There is only Snorlax. That is all you ever need. He is the one true king. Aquarium Keeping just needs a Final Fantasy crossover, that it will have a golden age again. I mean, with what we can do in 3D printing, of course the big problem is like licensing. But what you can do in 3D printing and like window cling level backgrounds, you could easily do a Final Fantasy-esque tank. I would love to see someone do a Final Fantasy VII like Midgar tank, or like Balam Garden from 8, only because it looked cool. I don't like 8 as a game, but the Balam Garden itself was just very cool looking. I think it would be interesting if somebody like went truly crazy, because I've seen like people who put a lot of like the big models of like the AT-AT walkers and do like a Hoth scene from Star Wars with fish swimming around in it, and it looks amazing. Fire eels totally do look like Leviathan from 15. I agree. I 100% agree. But yeah, I think it would be cool to see somebody. That would be the type of like internet aquarium slop tube I would watch. Like if aquarium info. If you ever see this, I don't know whether the gal who is in all the videos actually runs the channel or if she's just the on-screen talent, whatever. But still, instead of doing dumb Lego things or whatever, give us Final Fantasy. Do a Final Fantasy aquarium crossover. I, with my entirely limited channel in comparison, will promote the ever-living hell out of it. All day long. Because I'm a giant nerd. Alright. You're using the word slop too? Oh, come on, man. I worked at radio for a while. I understand what slop is. Gelatharina species Calitusa will be my personal golden age for my... Dude, that fish is such a cool looking fish. I can't wait to see yours at like young adult and like proper adult size when you get them breeding. Brother, I'm really excited. Because I'm your first customer. As soon as you're ready to sell some, I am customer number 1. I don't care what Jason says. I'm customer number 1. I'm bigger than him. I will bully him off of the food chain if I have to. I love the guy, but I am number 1. Oh, Lord. Hoot Aquatics. Oh, you got... Okay, so Mousehold is like one of my wife's absolute favorites. She loves Mousehole, and she regularly names it Disney Fast Pass. But yeah. Rowlet, I know. Darumaka, I feel like I know that one, but I don't off the top of my head. My knowledge of Pokemon gets more and more limited over time because they release more than my poor brain can keep up with. But yeah. Featherfin, let it get covered in algae and mulm. You're talking about like the Midgar to look extra grimy because that would fit. And that'd be like the coolest like aquatic way to make like a really grimy Midgar. Oh yeah. I like where your head's at. Featherfin. I like where your head's at. Oh Lord. Okay, I know we went way off of the Aquarium Express deep down into the Bentley is a like incoherent mess, but I appreciate all of you so much for being here. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything in particular that is kind of quick to answer. If you did have a major question for any reason and I didn't get to it, like bentley.pasco@gmail.com is my email. Feel free to email me if you need an Aquarium 911. Email me. There's the Let Me Help You video that gives you all the details that help me basically give you the best possible answers I can. All that usual stuff. Basically, I try my best to help people. I can be a little slow to respond sometimes. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get better on certain things. Oh, Guppy Girl. Have you ever used the Hydro Lights? I have not yet. How do I feel about them? I think like a lot of other like companies with random names that bring in Chinese manufactured lights, you're playing that same gauntlet where most of them nowadays, LEDs in general, are fairly good quality despite being cheap, but you have a lot of risks in the sense that they don't have the level of waterproofing necessary to protect them should you splash too much water on them or drop them in your tank. So you're playing that game compared to, say, like this thing, and if it's not obvious by the sitting here, yes, I've been playing around with this quite a bit. This is the new Fluval 4.0 Nano. I said Nana. Jeez. It's an old lady. It's the old lady light. This thing is ridiculously bright for how tiny it is, by the way. Like, I want to see if I can make it obvious on screen before we end. I was screwing around with this thing. So my phone randomly plays a video when I try to wake it up rather than do what I want it to do. I get so many alerts, and when I accidentally try to do things and dismiss them, half the time it turns them on, and it's quite frustrating. There it is. Like here. So note, we can maybe point this at the wall. Maybe it's more obvious, but do you see how much light this thing puts out? Like, and I have a big light that lights me for doing streams. Turn it back off, right? Note now. The level of raw output power from the like new plant lights is pretty nutso. It is crazy bright compared to the previous ones. But yeah, no, Guppy Girl, happy to answer. And I think MNC puts it right. Like, Higer is kind of a quantity over quality place. They bring in tons of stuff. Some of them are phenomenal, and some of them are not so great. But they have really efficient pricing, period. So there's that. Fish the Keeping had a nice bottle of Jefferson's Ocean at the Clash. Jefferson's Ocean. Here's my thing with that. See, we got me off topic again. I'm trying to even end my stream, but no, you got me. You're hooking me back in, brother. Have you tried out the Chihiro's Lights? Not yet. I'm working on it. I've got somebody that diligently is pestering me. You know who you are, only way. To get a Chihiro's Light. It's just a matter of having the right tank to use one. Is really what it comes down to. And I only have so much time to like play around with lights right now with the number of tanks I own. So it's kind of getting the right tank and scenario and all that kind of stuff. But it is on my list of something to get to and to properly do a lot of work with. So yeah. But my thing is, Ocean is like hit or miss. It's very dependent on the batch. Some batches are very good. Some batches are not so great. So I'm glad you got a good one. Because I've had ones where I was like, this tastes like really salty and not good. And I've had other ones, especially some of the earliest ones that got released, where I was like, this is very nice, especially for its price point. It's a bit of a gimmick. I agree with what Bob is saying, but yeah. Yeah. Balcones Brimstone. Oh, I bet that is funky as... Ardbeg 10. I can't do Ardbeg. I can't do heavily peated scotches. They completely destroy my my ability to taste anything other than a campfire or an ashtray. Vibes Aquatics. What's up, Vibes? Good start now. Oh, Lord. If I kept going for another hour, my wife would probably murder me. She'd be like, I want dinner. Shut up. What's the... I'm trying to think. There's... I thought I had it here on my desk, but I guess I'm wrong. Is it down there? Oh, I must have took it downstairs. I thought I had it up here, but there's a Penelope, which is Midwest Grain Products, MGP, Rosin Squib. Don't start barking now. We're at the tail end, puppy. Channy, you got to say hi for the stream. You got to bark. Of course you do. Sit down and relax. Good girl. Very good. Thank you for only one bark. I appreciate you. But Penelope put out their like fuck cancer bottle. And they have like two different ones. One's at barrel strength, one's at not, and they both have different mash bills. I was really surprised by how good that was. I picked one up this year because I wanted to try it, and also I've had members of my family who have fought and beat cancer, so anytime somebody is raising money for cancer research, I'm kind of inherently in. But yeah, that'd be the most recent one I got that was like pretty good. Smoke with Texas Scrub Oak. Well, that's gonna get extra funky, like super crazy funky. I'd probably be willing to try it, but I probably wouldn't buy an entire bottle. I'd be worried. Like some of the Balcone stuff is just like too over the top funky for my palate, but some of it tastes good. So I don't know. It's like I have this another example. I know, totally not fish related. Sorry, people. This is like the tail end of a pick of a wilderness trail we did. It's a small. You see this like tiny amount that's left in this bottle. it is like one of the funkiest weeded bourbons I've had, and I love it because it's the right kind of funk. Yeah, cancer has trained too many loved ones. Yeah, I've been very lucky in that I had a cousin who had leukemia at like 12, and she beat it. And now she's this crazy, wonderful, determined girl who's just kind of out there kicking ass in life. And it's one of those like things. It's very heartwarming to see that she just kicked its butt and is just rocking life. And then my mom also like fought breast cancer and beat it because we're too stubborn. So we got that going for us. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, there's so many cancers. Like, I knew folks when I was younger that lost family members to cancer, and it's horrible. It's horrible, and that's why like any kind of pro cancer research outside of like the Susan G. Komen Foundation, because they waste so much money on not the research and a bunch of administrative BS that I don't like supporting that particular foundation. But things like St. Jude's, as an example, like I donate an amount of money to them every year because they're what helped my cousin for one. So I know how wonderful of a charity they are, and if you look at the math behind how much they actually put their money toward helping people versus administrative fees and all that kind of stuff, they're one of the best in the biz. So yeah, yeah. Anyway, gang. Okay, hold on, Mike. I was the same way for years until we started installing high output LEDs at work in the power plants. I bought some cheap from the manufacturer. Hit me up if you want the details. I'm curious, like, where the difference is. Because, like, I've seen some, like, really cheap but fairly powerful LEDs that are designed to go in, like, car shops. That, like, my dad has shown me and stuff. And, like, they've just put out so much high quality white light for effectively nothing in their price cost, and especially at their wattage of power usage. It's really, really impressive. But yeah, anyway, gang, well, thank you all for being here. If you do need my help, as always, email me, bentley.pasco@gmail.com. I will get to your email. I will respond to you. Just might take a little while. Aquarium 911 or just generic questions, feel free to shoot those to me. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, I'll actually be on time and not slightly late this time. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome. And this light is ridiculously powerful, so I'm quite looking forward to playing around with it.